This happened when I was really young, but I still remember it like it was yesterday. The sound of thunder still makes my stomach turn, because it brings back that night. My parents had gone out for just a few hours. I was supposed to be asleep, safe, alone. But I wasn't alone. It was storming hard, wind rattling the windows, rain lashing against the roof. I thought I'd be brave, that I'd enjoy the quiet and the cartoons. But somewhere between the lightning strikes, I realized something was watching me. I didn't see it right away, but I felt it, in the hallway, in the mirror, and later, sitting just a few feet behind me. And what's worse, I never told anyone, until now. I remember waving goodbye to my parents as they pulled out of the driveway. They were heading to some office dinner, nothing big, just a few hours. I was 9, maybe 10, old enough to stay home with the doors locked and emergency numbers by the fridge. They kissed my forehead, told me to be good, and left me with snacks and cartoons. But as the sun went down, the storm rolled in harder. Thunder cracked like a whip across the sky. Wind howled through the trees. And the power flickered once, then again. I huddled under my blanket on the couch, pretending I wasn't scared. But the shadows on the walls seemed to stretch longer. The hum of the refrigerator suddenly felt too loud. And every creak of the house, every shifting floorboard, made me freeze. I knew this house, but that night, it felt like it didn't know me, like I didn't belong in it anymore. At first, it was kind of exciting. No bedtime, no rules, just me, a bowl of candy, and the glow of the television lighting up the living room. I sprawled across the couch, watching cartoons and tossing gummy bears into my mouth like I owned the place. The rain outside tapped softly against the window, steady, almost calming. It felt cozy, safe. But then, the thunder rolled in deeper, louder, the kind that rattles the windows and thumps in your chest. The lights blinked once, then again. The hallway down to the bedrooms looked darker than it should have, and the sound of the wind outside started to feel less like nature and more like something knocking. Still, I told myself it was fine. I wasn't scared, not really. Not yet. That's when I heard it. A faint tapping on the living room window. Not rain, not wind. Rhythmic, intentional. I paused the television and turned toward the sound. Nothing but darkness beyond the glass. Just trees swaying in the storm. I waited. Nothing. So I laughed at myself, grabbed a handful of candy, and hit play again. But then, out of the corner of my eye, something moved. Fast. A blur just past the kitchen doorway. I sat up, stared. It was gone. Maybe it was a shadow. Maybe my imagination. I told myself I was being silly. But the cartoons weren't funny anymore. The candy didn't taste as sweet. Then, click. The lights went out. Everything, all at once, went quiet. The hum of the fridge, the whir of the television, gone. Just me, the dark, and the storm outside, screaming louder than before. The power was still out. I grabbed the flashlight from the kitchen drawer. The weak yellow beam barely cut through the dark. I didn't want to move, but I had to check the hallway, just in case. As I walked past the mirror on the wall, I froze. In the reflection, someone was standing behind me. Still, tall, too tall. My breath caught in my throat. I spun around, heart pounding in my ears. Nothing. No one. just the empty hallway behind me and my own shadow. I turned back to the mirror. It was empty now. Just me, alone. Or at least, that's what I kept telling myself. I stared a second longer, then turned the mirror around to face the wall. I didn't want it looking at me anymore, or showing me things I wasn't supposed to see. I wasn't hungry. I wasn't brave. I just wanted Mom and Dad to come home. The lights came back with a sudden buzz. Every bulb in the house flickered once, then glowed steady. I let out a breath I didn't realize I was holding. Maybe it was all in my head. Maybe the storm just made things weird. I walked slowly into the living room, flashlight still in hand, and stopped. Someone was sitting on the couch, perfectly still, back turned to me. Looking at the television, which was off, I stared, not breathing. It wasn't Mom. It wasn't Dad. Too tall, too still. Hello? My voice barely left my throat. The figure didn't move. Mom? I tried again, stepping closer. And just like that, gone. The couch was empty. I screamed, louder than I ever had. Ran back into the hallway, heart exploding in my chest. I grabbed the phone with shaking hands and called my parents. They didn't answer. I locked every door I could and waited. The sound of the front door unlocking was the greatest relief I'd ever felt. I ran to my parents, crying, trying to explain what had happened. The figure, the tapping, the mirror, the couch. They listened, but I could see it in their eyes. They thought I was just scared. Just a kid with a big imagination on a stormy night. They checked the whole house. Everything was in its place. No broken locks. No footprints. No signs of anyone or anything. But I know what I saw. And even now, years later, I won't go near that couch in the dark. Years later, while helping my mom clean out the attic, I stumbled across an old box labeled 2005. Inside, photos from that night. One in particular caught my eye. A picture of me sitting on the living room floor, holding a bowl of candy, the storm raging outside. But it wasn't me that made my heart stop. In the mirror behind me was a figure, blurry, pale, standing perfectly still. Not one of us. Not a trick of the light. I showed my mom. She went pale, said nothing. I wasn't alone that night, and whoever was with me never left. I was 16 when it happened. We live in a quiet, tree-lined neighborhood where nothing ever really happens. Just me, my parents, and my older brother, though he left for college a few months ago, so it's felt quieter than usual lately. Too quiet, sometimes. I have this condition. Doctors don't have a fancy name for it, but they call it a kind of audio hallucination disorder. It only flares up during storms. Whenever it rains hard, like really hard, I start hearing things. Whispers, footsteps, sometimes even voices calling my name. Not real, of course. At least, that's what I've always been told. It was late October, a Saturday night. The kind of cold, wet night that soaks into your bones. My parents were already asleep upstairs, and I was alone downstairs, reading. And the rain. The rain wasn't just loud that night. It felt alive, like it was trying to say something. I couldn't sleep. The rain wasn't just outside anymore. It felt like it had crept into the walls, into the ceilings, like the house itself was breathing with it. Normally, I like storms. They used to make me feel safe, like I was tucked away from the rest of the world. But this one felt wrong. Too loud. Too close. I tossed and turned in bed, then gave up and started pacing, back and forth, from the living room to the hallway. The floors creaked under my bare feet like they were answering something. I went into the kitchen and put the kettle on. Something warm, something normal. Tea always helps. But as the water began to boil, I noticed it. The rain sounded louder near the attic, like it was focused there. And then I heard it. Tap, tap, tap. Not rhythmic, not like a branch, not like a leak. Something off. I froze, the kettle whistling behind me. The tapping didn't stop. Curiosity is a strange thing. It doesn't always wait for courage. Sometimes it just pulls you forward. I left the tea and walked toward the attic stairs. The tapping was louder now. Not random anymore. Almost like footsteps. The attic door groaned open like it hadn't been touched in years. The smell hit me first. Old wood, dust, something damp. The power doesn't reach up there, so I grabbed the flashlight from the drawer by the stairs. Its beam flickered a bit, then steadied. The wooden steps creaked under each footfall. Slow, deliberate. Like I wasn't the first one up here tonight. When I reached the top, I swept the flashlight across the attic. Nothing. Just shadows, boxes, the usual. But then I saw them on the floorboards. Wet footprints. Not puddles, prints, barefoot, leading across the attic. But no broken windows. No open hatch. Just the rain. And those quiet, deliberate prints disappearing into the dark. And somehow, I wasn't scared. Not yet. That's when I heard it. A whisper. Soft. So soft I almost thought it was the rain. But it wasn't. It was a voice. And it said my name. My full name. Not like a question. Like a memory being spoken back to me. I spun around, flashlight trembling, sweeping every corner of the attic. Nothing. No footprints now. No movement. Just the steady drum of rain on the roof. And my name echoing in my head. I bolted. Down the stairs, 2 at a time, breath shallow, heart in my throat. I turned on every light I could reach. Kitchen, hall, bathroom, living room. Warm light should have helped. It didn't. Then, the voice again, clearer this time. Still soft, still wrong. Outside. Right outside the front door. I froze. It said my name again. No urgency, no anger. Just waiting. And for the first time that night, I knew whatever was out there knew me. I crept toward the living room window. Slow, careful. Like any sound might be heard. The curtains felt heavier than usual, like they knew what I was about to see. I peeled them back just enough to look outside, and there it was. Someone, standing in the middle of the street. No umbrella, no jacket, soaked to the bone. But they weren't shivering, weren't moving, just staring. The rain swallowed all sound, but I swear they were mouthing something over and over. I couldn't hear the words, but I felt them. Let me in. You called me. I stumbled back from the window. Called? I didn't call anyone. Not with my mouth. But maybe with something else. I remembered the storms before. The whispers, the shadows I told no one about. They always felt like tricks of the mind, auditory static. But this time, this wasn't just sound. This was real. And it was still out there, waiting. I stumbled back from the window, breath caught in my throat. My hands were ice. My legs didn't want to move, but I had to. I turned toward the hallway, heart pounding, trying to steady my breath. And then, the sound, a soft click, followed by the long, slow creak of the front door. I froze. No one touched the lock. No one turned the handle. It was bolted. I know it was bolted. But the door, it just opened. Wide enough to let in the sound of the rain and something else. The air changed, heavy and electric. No figure. No shadow. Just an empty threshold. And on the floor, a trail of wet footprints leading inside. Each step smeared across the hardwood, dripping with rain that shouldn't have been there. They didn't wander. They weren't lost. They moved in a straight line, right past the couch, through the hall, and toward one place only, the attic stairs. I ran to my parents' room, pounding on the door. No answer. I tried the knob, locked. I called out again, louder this time. Nothing. Just silence behind that door, and the whisper of rain pressing against the house. Grabbing the flashlight, I turned back to the attic. Every part of me screamed, "Don't go!" But something else? Something colder, deeper, pulled me up those steps. Each creak of the floorboard felt heavier than the last. The attic door was open now. The rain sounded deafening up here. And standing at the far end, by the window, was a figure. Soaked, motionless. Back turned. I couldn't breathe. I stepped forward, trembling, flashlight flickering. "Hello?" I whispered. The figure moved. It turned around, and I saw myself, my face, my eyes, my wet clothes. It smiled at me, almost sadly. Then it spoke. "You always hear me. You've finally listened." The storm outside roared louder than ever. Everything blurred. The attic, the rain, that face, my face. Then, nothing. When I opened my eyes, it was morning. Sunlight spilled through the curtains. Birds chirped like it was any other day. I was in bed. My mom stood in the doorway, smiling softly. She said they found me asleep on the couch, curled up with a blanket. I tried to protest. The door, the footprints, the attic. But they looked at me like I was dreaming. And maybe I was. I checked everything. The front door was still bolted shut. No puddles, no muddy trail, no signs of anything ever being there. Except the attic door was open. Not wide, just cracked, like it was waiting. I asked my parents if they'd gone up there. They hadn't. Said it probably creaked open from a draft. But I know better. It only rains hard once a year now. And every time, I hear my name in the storm. I'm 30 now. The older I get, the quieter I need life to be. After losing my mom last winter, the world just felt too loud. Friends tried to help, but nothing reached me. So I packed my gear and disappeared into the woods. I grew up in Oregon, where forests stretch forever and rivers don't need names. I learned young that true wilderness doesn't start where the trailhead ends, but where the maps stop making sense. Out here, alone, I remember how to breathe. No cell service, no notifications, just trees older than memory and the sound of my boots on pine needles. Some people think I'm escaping. Maybe I am. But in the silence, I'm not lost. I'm healing. Grief is a strange kind of compass. It points you inward. And every time I unzip my tent to the morning mist, I feel a little more like myself again. I wasn't running away. I just needed somewhere the world couldn't follow. After my brother died, the quiet was the only thing that made sense. So I loaded up the truck and picked a place far from everything, a forested ridge with no trails on the map, just a dry creek bed that curled out of sight like it had secrets to keep. The air was thin up here, the kind that makes your chest work for every breath. It felt right. As I pulled in, I noticed it. A faded old van, sun-bleached and dented, tucked just off a side trail beneath the trees. No license plate, no movement. Just sitting there, like it had been for years, or maybe days. I told myself it was probably nothing, but part of me knew better. I hiked a few miles past the van, cutting into the brush until I found a clearing near the dry creek. Set up camp, hung my food, went through the motions. But the silence, it wasn't peace. It was wrong. No birds, no insects, no wind through the branches, just nothing. Later, while filtering water from a shallow pool in the creek bed, I looked up, and there he was. A tall, thin man on the opposite bank, pale, still. He didn't say anything. Didn't move. Just stared, like he was studying something he'd never seen before. Then he turned without a word and slipped into the trees, quiet as smoke. I stood there for a long time, water still running through the filter, heart hammering against the silence. I told myself it was nothing, maybe a hunter, maybe just another person trying to disappear for a while. People come out here for all kinds of reasons. But something about the way he moved, the way he didn't move, stuck with me. By dusk, the trees felt closer, the air heavier. I kept glancing over my shoulder, certain I'd see him again. Then came the whistle, low, hollow, and far off. It echoed once, then stopped. A few minutes later, I heard rustling. Not wind, not animals. Just the deliberate crunch of brush, then nothing when I turned my head. I climbed into my tent before dark, zipped it shut like it mattered. No fire, no dinner, just me, wrapped in my sleeping bag, eyes wide open. Listening. Waiting. Knowing I wasn't alone out there. It was sometime after midnight when I heard it. Tap, tap, tap. Right outside the tent. Then a voice. Low, male, too close. Hey, I saw your fire earlier. I stopped breathing. I hadn't made a fire, not once. I stayed frozen, every muscle locked, one hand on my knife, the other on the pistol I keep by my sleeping bag. The voice moved, circling the tent, slow, dragging each word like it was meant to unnerve. You out here alone? A shadow passed by the mesh window. I didn't dare move. Then silence. Long, stretched silence. I started to think maybe it was over. Maybe he'd gone. Then, click. Bright white light popped through the fabric wall. Not lightning, not a flashlight. The unmistakable burst of a disposable camera flash. Someone was taking pictures. Of my tent. Of me. I unzipped the tent slowly, one hand gripping my flashlight, the other wrapped tight around the gun. The beam cut through the dark, and there he was. 15 feet away. Standing dead still. wearing a filthy green rain poncho, hood up, face half shadowed. In one hand, a cheap plastic camera. In the other, a long curved knife. I aimed straight at his chest. Drop it, now. He didn't move. Just tilted his head, slow, like a bird sizing up prey. I fired into a nearby stump. Wood splintered, echo sharp through the still woods. He flinched, stepped back, but didn't run. Didn't even lower the knife. Then he said it, barely above a whisper. "You look like my sister." He smiled. She wouldn't stop talking either. My stomach turned cold. This wasn't random. This was practiced. And I wasn't just camping anymore. I kept the gun leveled, voice low but firm. "Drop the knife. Drop the camera. Now." He hesitated, then let them fall into the mud with a soft thud. "Sit," I ordered, "hands where I can see them." He obeyed, slow and strange, like it was a game. I didn't ask why. Didn't ask anything. I backed toward my tent, packed with shaking hands. Just essentials. No time to be thorough. I never turned my back, not once. Before I left, I picked up the knife and the camera, ripped the film out, wrapped it in an old shirt. Then I hurled them both deep into the trees, far from his reach. He just sat there, staring. I didn't wait to see if he stayed. I hiked. All night. Through slick brush and soaked trails. My flashlight flickered, once, twice, then steadied. Every rustle felt like footsteps. Every shadow, a threat. But I kept going. Because stopping wasn't an option anymore. I reached my car just after sunrise, legs trembling, soaked to the bone. The van was gone. I called the police, gave them everything, the location, the description, the knife, the camera. They took a report. Nothing ever came of it. I don't camp alone anymore. Not really. I bring backup friends, or at least a satellite beacon, and never near dry creek beds. But it's not him that haunts me. Not his face, not his voice. It's the quiet way he moved, like he'd done it before. Like I wasn't the first tent he whispered outside of. Not the first fire he watched from the trees. I keep thinking about that disposable camera. It only had one flash left, and I was the last picture on it.